The lithium in your phone battery was probably mined in Australia or Chile. The cobalt in your electric vehicle was probably dug out of the ground in the Democratic Republic of Congo. The rare earth elements in your laptop's hard drive may have come from deposits in Brazil, Vietnam, or the United States. But before any of those raw materials became a battery, a magnet, a semiconductor, or a motor, before the rock became the technology, it passed through China. Almost certainly, almost inevitably, whether the mining company was Australian, Canadian, or American, whether the end customer was in Germany, Japan, or California, whether the product was a consumer device, an industrial machine, or a weapons system, the rock went to China. China processed it. China sold it back to the world. This is the most consequential industrial fact of the 21st century, and most people have never thought about it for 30 seconds. Because it is invisible. Nobody sees it happening. Nobody feels it in their daily life. The supply chain is abstract. The processing chemistry is obscure, and the geopolitical implications are buried in technical reports that almost nobody reads. Until the supply gets cut off. Until the export controls land. Until the price spikes. Until the factory stops. And then, suddenly, everyone wants to know, how did this happen? How did one country end up controlling the processing of minerals that the entire modern world depends on? Why can't anyone stop it? And why, after decades of warnings, task forces, diversification strategies, and political promises, is the dependency getting worse, not better? China controls roughly 99% of global gallium processing, 95% of magnesium, 83% of tungsten, 69% of all rare earth processing, and by 2030, it is projected to control over 60% of all refined critical mineral supply on Earth. Those numbers are not the result of geological luck. They are the result of the most patient, most deliberate, most strategically sophisticated industrial policy ever executed by any government in human history. This is how it was built, why it cannot simply be dismantled, and what it means for everyone who thought the global economy was something other than what it actually is. There is a distinction that almost nobody makes in coverage of the critical mineral crisis, and it is the most important distinction in the entire story. Mining and processing are not the same thing. Mining is relatively straightforward. You find the deposit. You dig it up. You crush the ore. Australia is extraordinarily good at this. Chile is extraordinarily good at this. The DRC has deposits that geological luck placed beneath its soil. The United States has rare earth deposits. Brazil has niobium. South Africa has platinum group metals. The world does not lack for mineral deposits. The world lacks for the industrial capacity to turn those deposits into the refined, purified, specification-grade materials that high-technology manufacturing requires. That industrial capacity, the smelters, the chemical processing plants, the solvent extraction facilities, the hydrometallurgical refineries, is overwhelmingly concentrated in China. And building it took not years, but decades. Not private investment, but state direction. Not market logic, but strategic patience of a kind that the Western economic model is structurally incapable of producing. The Rare Earth video asked what China controls. This is the story of how China built that control, step by step, industry by industry, decade by decade. using a playbook so systematic and so effective that it has been replicated across every critical mineral category. And why the West, despite knowing exactly what is happening, despite genuinely trying to respond, is finding that the industrial logic of what China built makes it almost impossible to undo. The Chinese industrial dominance playbook has 5 steps. It has been executed identically across solar panels, batteries, rare earths, gallium, magnesium, tungsten, and a dozen other strategic materials. Once you see the pattern, you see it everywhere. Step 1. Identify the target industry. Chinese state planners, through the National Development and Reform Commission, through 5-year plans, through the strategic industrial policy apparatus that has no equivalent in any Western democracy, identify an industry that will be strategically important and that China does not yet dominate. Step 2. Provide non-commercial financing. Chinese state banks, the China Development Bank, the Export-Import Bank of China, the Agricultural Development Bank, provide loans to Chinese companies in the target industry at interest rates and on terms that no commercial bank anywhere in the world would offer. Not because the projects are commercially viable at those terms, because the strategic goal is dominance, not profit. The losses are the cost of the strategy. Step 3. Create domestic demand. Chinese industrial policy simultaneously creates massive domestic demand for the products of the target industry, through government procurement, through mandates, through subsidies to downstream consumers. This gives Chinese producers a home market at scale while they are still learning and optimizing. Western competitors have no equivalent market advantage. Step 4. Flood global markets. Once Chinese producers have achieved cost levels, through scale, through subsidized inputs, through cheaper labor and lower environmental costs, that undercut Western producers, they flood global markets with product at prices below the cost of production for any competitor without equivalent state support. Western companies, operating on commercial terms, cannot survive. They go bankrupt. Their facilities close. Their expertise disperses. Step 5. Consolidate and control. Once Western competitors are eliminated, Chinese producers raise prices to sustainable levels, consolidate the industry, and sit on a dominant position that is self-reinforcing. The scale advantage compounds, the expertise deepens, and any new entrant faces not just the challenge of building a facility, but the certainty that Chinese producers will undercut them again if they get close to competitive. This is not speculation. This is the documented history of the solar panel industry, the battery industry, the rare earth industry, the gallium industry. Executed deliberately, executed successfully, executed again and again across every category that Chinese planners identified as strategically important. Let's sit with the specific numbers for a moment, because they are extraordinary. Gallium, essential to the compound semiconductors in radar, 5G, and satellite systems, China controls 99% of global processing. The entire rest of the world combined produces 1%. Magnesium, essential to lightweight aluminum alloys used in automotive and aerospace manufacturing, China controls 95%. Europe's last magnesium smelter closed in 2001, unable to compete with Chinese prices. When China's magnesium production was briefly disrupted by energy rationing in 2021, European automotive production lines stopped within weeks. Tungsten, used in cutting tools, armor-piercing ammunition, and high-temperature applications, China controls 83% of global supply. Rare earth processing, the category that encompasses the 17 elements used in magnets, phosphors, and catalysts, China controls 69% and rising. Lithium refining, the foundation of the battery economy, China controls 78%, despite Australia and South America hosting most of the mining. These are not areas where China has a slight competitive advantage. These are near monopolies. In gallium and magnesium, the concentration is so extreme that a single policy decision in Beijing can immediately disrupt manufacturing across multiple continents. And here is the number that should focus every mind in Western policy. By 2030, China is projected to control over 60% of all refined critical mineral supply globally. Not declining, growing. The West has been trying to diversify for a decade. The diversification has not kept pace with China's continued expansion. The dependency is not stabilizing, it is deepening.
The standard Western policy response to strategic vulnerability is, let the market fix it. Prices rise, investment flows in, new supply emerges, problem solved. It is how the Western economic model is supposed to work. It is how it has worked for most commodities throughout history. It is not working for critical minerals. And the reason it is not working is the deliberate exclusion strategy that Chinese state-backed producers execute against any competitor who tries to enter the market. Here is how the exclusion works. A Western company, backed by private investment, operating on commercial terms, decides that high rare earth prices and strategic vulnerability make building a processing facility in Australia or Canada a viable business proposition. It raises capital. It breaks ground. It spends 5 years and hundreds of millions of dollars building the facility. And then, as that facility approaches completion and begins to represent a genuine competitive threat to Chinese market dominance, Chinese state-backed producers increase output and cut prices to levels that are below the cost of production for the new entrant, but that are entirely sustainable for Chinese producers backed by state banks that are not required to make a commercial return. The Western facility cannot compete at those prices. Its investors lose their money. The facility either closes or limps along at minimal capacity. Chinese dominance is preserved. This has happened repeatedly. It happened to the Mountain Pass rare earth mine in California, which went bankrupt in 2015 partly because of Chinese price competition. It happened to multiple Western battery material producers. It is the explicit mechanism by which Chinese industrial policy excludes commercial competition. Traditional market investment cannot overcome this. You cannot build a business case for a mineral processing facility when the dominant competitor has demonstrated willingness and ability to price you out of existence the moment you become a threat. Private capital requires returns. Chinese state banks do not. This is the fundamental structural problem that Western policymakers are grappling with and have not yet solved. The market will not fix this. Only sustained, large-scale government intervention, industrial policy on a scale and duration that Western political systems have historically been unwilling to sustain, can fix this. The Western response to critical mineral dependency has been real, sustained, and deeply insufficient. The United States has invoked the Defense Production Act to finance domestic rare earth and battery material production. The Inflation Reduction Act provided $369 billion in clean energy and critical mineral incentives. The bipartisan infrastructure law funded critical mineral projects. The Mineral Security Partnership, America and 14 allied nations, has been established to coordinate alternative supply chain development. Australia has designated critical minerals as a strategic priority and is investing in downstream processing to capture more value domestically. Canada has a critical mineral strategy.
The European Union has the Critical Raw Materials Act, which sets targets for domestic processing of strategic minerals. These efforts have produced real projects, real facilities, real progress. It is not enough, and the gap between what has been achieved and what is needed is explained by three structural problems that policy has not overcome. Time. Building a mineral processing facility takes 5 to 10 years from decision to production. The strategic competition is happening now. The supply chain vulnerabilities are present today. The timeline of industrial construction does not match the timeline of geopolitical urgency. Scale. The investment required to meaningfully reduce Chinese processing dominance across all critical mineral categories is measured in hundreds of billions of dollars over decades. The amounts currently being committed, while significant by historical standards, are a fraction of what the problem requires. Continuity. American industrial policy changes with administrations. The IRA, the most significant American critical mineral investment ever, is being partially dismantled by an administration with different priorities. China's industrial policy has been continuous across decades and multiple leadership transitions. A democracy that changes its industrial strategy every 4 years cannot compete with an autocracy that executes the same strategy for 30. Step back and see the full picture. China is not just dominating the processing of minerals that the current economy needs. It is positioning itself to control the processing of minerals that the future economy will need, and doing so at a pace that is outrunning every Western attempt to catch up. The critical minerals that matter most for the energy transition, lithium, cobalt, nickel, manganese, rare earths, are the same minerals that matter most for the military transition to electric and autonomous weapons systems. They are the same minerals that matter most for the AI infrastructure transition to massive data center computing. The electric stack, the defense stack, and the AI stack all converge on the same set of materials, and China controls the processing of all of them. This is not an accident. Chinese planners saw the convergence coming. They understood that the 21st century would be built on electrons, and that electrons require minerals, and that controlling the minerals means controlling the electrons, and that controlling the electrons means controlling the century. The West is not without resources or capabilities. It has the best universities, the deepest capital markets, the most innovative private sector. It has allies with mineral deposits and the political will to develop them. It has, when it chooses to use it, industrial policy capacity that can move markets. What it has lacked, and what China has had in abundance, is the one thing that cannot be purchased or mandated or incentivized into existence: strategic patience. China built this dominance over 30 years. It will take at least 15 to 20 years of sustained, coordinated, well-funded effort by the Western alliance to meaningfully reduce it. That is 15 to 20 years of consistent industrial policy across multiple election cycles, multiple administrations, multiple parliamentary majorities, in countries where consistency of that duration is historically rare. The minerals are in the ground everywhere. The processing is in China, and the gap between those two facts is not closing fast enough to matter. Not yet.